It was around 2:15 a.m. when we initially dosed up. We eyeballed it, and I'm guessing it was around 60 milligrams each. I will refer to us as A, S, and D. S and I had taken 5-MeO-DIPT before, and D had never taken it, although he was familiar with DXM and mushrooms. Around 3, we decided to go on a walk. D started talking very neurotically and was being very loud. We tried to calm him down, but he started trying to run away from us. When we caught him, he started attacking us and screaming. We decided that this was not the best for us, trying to keep a low profile that night. We are all honor students, and we were worried about our reputation. After we realized D was totally losing it, and we were fearing for his and our safety, we made the decision that we should try to knock him out. At this point, D had split into several personalities, one of them trying to run off like a scared animal, oftentimes running on all fours, the other viciously tearing at our throats, another talking in a cool and controlled voice saying to knock him out. S then tried punching him in the back of the head a few times, no reaction. He then tried hitting him over the head with a rock. All this did was turn to make the situation bloody. After hitting D with the rock, he fell over and then got up. He looked at me, covered in blood, with the look of someone possessed. I could see D's soul through his eyes, trapped in his own mind. I then wrestled him into a stairway of the apartments we were in. S was banging on doors trying to get people to come out and help and to call the police and paramedics, but they all seemed too scared to help. Finally, the paramedics showed up, but after seeing how violent D was being to me, they were scared to assist and waited for the police. When the police finally showed up, they tackled both of us, and then D began trying to fight them off. It took about 3 minutes and 6 officers trying to contain him to get restrained. D was trying his hardest to hurt them and escape. The police were beating him with knife sticks and macing him almost non-stop. They gave him a fire test to see if he responded to pain, which he didn't. There I was, drenched in blood in the stairway of some crappy apartments, watching my best friend, a normally good student and kid, trying to take on an entire police force covered in blood, switching between different personalities and screaming as loud as possible, sometimes screaming my name. The police then started asking questions about why he was bleeding and put S in handcuffs, saying that if D died, he would be charged with murder. I tried telling them what he took, and they couldn't understand. There was one fireman actually listening to me and allowing me to explain what tryptamines are, and what they should do, and resources they could check. But all the police were just screaming at me and telling me to quit being a smartass. They were very confused about the 5 in the 5-MeO-DIPT and kept saying that he took 5 of something. I then went and got S's roommate, and when I came back outside, all of the cop cars, ambulance, and the fire trucks were gone, with no sign of the incident happening. I then called my mom and D's mom to let them know what happened. We drove down to the hospital and found S and D. S was in the lobby. They had shot him up with Valium, and he had no idea what had happened or why he was there. D was in a bed strapped down screaming and jumping on the bed up and down. He was yelling my name, but when the doctor had me stand over him, he didn't recognize me. In the end, D ended up being fine, except for all of his physical injuries from being hit with a rock and from a 5-minute police beating. He looked like he had been in a car crash, not a drug overdose. He remained in the hospital for 3 days. S ended up not being charged with anything, and now all that is left is a bunch of upset parents. D doesn't remember any of this, and it honestly seems like he doesn't believe us when we tell the story. After doing this, I can't stress enough how dangerous drugs can be. This was the most scary night of my life, and I keep seeing the images of us soaked in blood and D screaming and attacking everyone. I will never touch drugs again, and for those of you who do, please be careful on your doses. I'm guessing we all took around 60 milligrams, and we all reacted differently. I was tripping, but I remained very aware of the situation. S just stopped paying attention and sort of passed out. D went on an insane rampage, worse than any PCP story I have heard of. Be careful with tryptamines. They can be very dangerous and potentially life-threatening. This next story involves a scene talking about the R word, so if you are sensitive to that kind of material, please skip this story. This was my second time experimenting with acid, and also the most intense. I bought 2 blotter hits from a friend at band practice. It was a very thick, deeply blue colored paper. I dosed 1 hit and had band practice, which was the most amazing thing ever. It increased my musical ability tenfold. After that, though, everything went downhill. It was winter and it was nighttime. We were driving to a friend's apartment very close by, but only made it down the street before crashing into a ditch. Since that happened, I kept asking myself and one other person I was walking with if we had crashed and died. He said, "Yeah, you're dead," to fuck with me, which turned out not to be a good idea. When we got to the apartment, 4 other people were there we knew, and everyone was on acid at this point. I dosed my second hit 45 minutes after the first, which was a big mistake. I underestimated the strength of my dose. Thinking I was dead this whole time, I now thought I could do anything I wanted to without consequence. I almost raped my friend's girlfriend that was there right in front of him, thinking we could hook up because I was in a fantasy world. I had extreme personality detachment and ego dissolution. I proceeded to trash my friend Dan's apartment for no reason. I was dumping full ashtrays onto the floor, throwing videos at the door, knocking over tables, and trying to break a few windows with a chair. He gave me a warning to leave, but I could not communicate with anyone. I was totally disconnected from reality. He then punched me in the face, and I flew backwards a number of feet, slamming into a door, although I did not feel 1 ounce of pain. I scrambled to my feet, went outside, and ran away as fast as I could. I then started breaking windows of random houses and running away into a main road with heavy traffic, nearly getting demolished by speeding cars. My insanity was inconceivable. I thought I was in my natural element and was free, but in reality, I had pissed myself and removed every article of clothing I had on, including my shoes, and was running down the street naked. The cops surely came and slowly rolled alongside talking to me. They asked me if I had taken any drugs, and I told them I took LSD and thought nothing of it. I tried to run away, but they tackled me and brought me to the police station. I also spit in the police officer's face inside the squad car after him asking me a reasonable question. Being in police custody was physically painful. All I could think about was losing my sanity for the rest of my life and being institutionalized. After being processed at 4:30 in the morning, a cop took me home. I regained my sanity, but was having extreme visuals on the way back. My little adventure had made the newspaper and everything. Days and weeks afterward, I was depressed and extremely embarrassed for what I had done. Try explaining that to your girlfriend, who is the sister of the girl I tried to hook up with. All in all, worst day of my life. I am still paying off lawyer debts. If you're still awake and haven't fallen asleep yet, please hit that like button. It helps out a lot. Also, subscribe if you haven't already. I'm trying to hit 25,000 subscribers in the next couple of months. Also, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any new upload. Thank you so much, and let's continue the video. I feel it may be important to inform you that I have been habitually smoking weed for years, and I am also an experienced MDMA user. I frequently take various prescription drugs for recreational use as well. I have always been a fan of drugs, and have always took kindly to them. Last Friday, me and 2 of my best friends decided to get some mushrooms. This was my second experience with the substance, and the first had been somewhat weak. I had only mild hallucinations and felt extremely confused for about 6 hours. This time around, the mushrooms were said to be more potent, and I figured I would trip harder considering I now knew what to expect from the substance. We ate the shrooms with no real game plan for the night. We decided we would just let the mushrooms guide us. We ate them at about 9 p.m. and headed to a local park to prepare for the onset. After about 30 minutes, a very strange feeling came over me. It was as if with each second, I was overcome with a new and unfamiliar emotion. I became very anxious and felt like I should be doing something, but had no idea what. After about 10 minutes or so, this feeling went away. I was now very giggly and my mind was racing. One of my friends and I saw red and green pixels over our field of vision, like snow on a television screen. I could see past it, but it was covering everything. Now that we were beginning to trip, we wanted to go to a more secluded spot. Foolishly, we chose an elementary school playground. There were no homes around it, just a pasture with a bunch of horses. This is where we had been the last time we tripped. We chilled there for a while, enjoying the colors and patterns. I was already tripping harder than the last time, and I was very impressed. I was stupid to think that was all to come. As we sat, huddled around a frog that we had found, I looked up to see a spotlight shining around the corner. I instantly knew it was the police. Being that I was on mushrooms, this sent me into an instant panic. I ran and my friends followed. Now, if I had been stoned or sober, I would have kept my cool and handled the cops, but anyone who has shroomed knows it's a little different. So we're running and the cops have yet to see us. The problem was, there was nothing but flat ground all around us. No woods or anything else that would help us get rid of the cops. Just as I was starting to lose faith, I noticed a ditch full of grass clippings that was surrounded with tall grass and brush. Without hesitation, I jumped in it and covered myself. As I sat there tripping my balls off, I heard the car pull up to where we were and a door opens, then closes. The cops passed me 4 or 5 times before spotting me. They held a gun to my head as they arrested us. I lay face down in the wet grass, cuffed. Looking over at my friend, I saw smoke billowing up from his body, and I was convinced that we were in the midst of a war and he had been shot and I was to be held hostage. In the back of the cop car, I kept thinking we were moving when we weren't. The cops' heads looked extremely small. My friend could hardly speak when the cops would ask him something. To the question, "What is your address?" he responded with a combination of numbers, letters, and streets in our neighborhood. I almost completely freaked out a couple of times, but I was able to keep my cool because we had convinced the cops we had only smoked weed. The whole experience with the cops seemed so surreal. When they were done with us, one of my friends walked away with a possession, the other an MIP for tobacco, and I got nothing. My one friend had 4 Valium on him in case of a bad trip that he somehow managed to swallow in the back of the car while in cuffs. The cops ended up dropping us off at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. When we got back to my house, the trip got more intense than it had been all night. We were outside in the parking lot of my apartment, but I felt as if I was in some sort of habitat, not outdoors. The stars in the sky formed groups of 3. Cars seemed very small, as if I wouldn't be able to fit in them. My friend who had took the Valium was incredibly fucked up. He couldn't walk, stand, or speak, and I thought that he was going to die. I felt responsible for the whole night. When I went in for the night, I went in my bathroom and stood in front of the mirror for hours. My skin looked a weird shade of brown. I kept picturing myself in an old black and white movie. The old movies from like the 30s where there is no sound, just choppy visuals and an occasional black screen with printed dialogue. In the movie, I would pick up a mushroom and eat it, and it would zoom in on my pupils dilating, and then there would be the dialogue screen where it said, "The ape eats the sacred mushroom." When I closed my eyes to sleep, I saw incredible patterns, lights, and colors. I laid there for hours taking it all in. By the time I fell asleep, the visuals had turned into disturbing images of thousands of spiders and bees crawling and buzzing everywhere. I then slept, and the journey was over. Although it might not sound like it, this experience was amazing, and I would not have changed it. I probably wouldn't be saying this if I had gotten in some kind of trouble by the cops, but it is definitely something I will remember for the rest of my life. I'm 17. This was not my first time trying mushrooms, but it was definitely the worst. I have tried mushrooms 3 times. The first time, I had 1/32 of an ounce. The second time, 1/16, and the last time, 1/8. I had planned out with a few of my friends that the first day of winter break, we would drop some shrooms. In total, there was supposed to be 4 of us. When the day came, 6 people showed up. I decided to go along with the plan anyways. My girlfriend, M, and I ate 1/8 of an ounce, while everyone else had 1/16 of an ounce. We dropped them at 10:30 a.m. After about a half an hour, we were all starting to feel the mushrooms coming on. A few of my friends started having giggle fits, and a couple of us just looked up at the ceiling. We were listening to When the Music's Over by The Doors. All of a sudden, M gets up and runs into the bathroom. I decide after a few seconds to go check on her. When I walked into the bathroom, M started to lay down and shake. I began to get very worried and yelled out to my friends to help. I managed to get M up and I carried her into my room. She was very pale, looked extremely afraid, and she kept saying she was tired while she closed her eyes. My friend G and I told her to stay awake and that she'd be okay. She told us that she couldn't remember falling down. After another 5 or so minutes, my friends decided they wanted to go on a walk. Em agreed, except when she started putting her coat on, she began to look very afraid, and she said that she had changed her mind. So we just sat in my room for a while. All of a sudden, I started to get really afraid and wondered when my friends would get back. Em and I decided to lay on the couch in the living room and watch TV to keep a hold on reality. It didn't work. When my friends got back, I started to have visuals. All the walls started to breathe very intensely. Em asked my brother to see if there was any way to come down early from shrooms. He went upstairs to look online. After about 10 minutes, I went upstairs to ask him what he'd found out. His search had turned up nothing. I decided to call my uncle and ask him for help. My uncle told me stories about when he had done them to try to calm me down. I returned to M and said there was nothing, and returned to lying on the couch. My friends had turned the channel to MTV. Around 1:30. As I lay and try to watch MTV, my visuals become much more intense. All of the walls in the room were vibrating very intensely, and whenever somebody moved, an image of their body seemed to be a little behind. Then, the TV started to echo, but no one's voice that I was with echoed. I believed I was going insane, so I decided to close my eyes. At first, all I saw was a blue line going down a tunnel. Then I saw flaming skulls raining down, and I was having thoughts about death. I kept thinking that no one would care if I died, and I started to wonder why I was still alive. Then the skulls turned into a blue line again, and I started to scream, in my head, "Why am I here? What's the meaning of life?" Then I saw a Roman face, just an outline, in blue. Instead of having the red crest on top though, there was fire. Then I came to the realization that the meaning of life was love. All of a sudden, I was very happy. I told Em, and she just smiled. Around 2, I finally opened my eyes and sat up. My friends asked if I was feeling better, and I said that I was. Then we watched MTV and made fun of the people on the shows for a couple of hours. I felt really good, and so did everyone else. We managed to just talk and have fun for a couple of hours. Then they asked if I was up for smoking a bowl. I said that I was, and we went into my room, except Em. Around 4. We just finished smoking a bowl when Em came in. She said she wasn't feeling quite well. She came and sat by me. Then all of a sudden, she got up and ran to the bathroom. I followed her and got there in time to catch her before she passed out again. I dragged her into the living room and woke her up. She looked extremely scared again. My stepdad shouted down and asked what was going on. He said bullshit and called her mom. After he called her mom, he called the ambulance. I got Em to the couch, and then we had a police officer and 2 EMTs downstairs with us. The cop grilled Em while I stood in the hallway in the doorway of my room. I started to feel blood rush to my head, and my vision got all starry, and I needed to sit down. It turns out that the same thing happened to my friend B, who had just gone upstairs. While I was being helped, the cop got Em to say we were on mushrooms. So M, B, G, and I were put into the ambulance. The other 2 managed to play it cool and didn't have to go. When we started to leave, Em broke down in tears. I held her and said it would be okay. One of the EMTs tells us not to worry because he'd done them before and it wasn't a big deal. I was very pale and dehydrated because I hadn't had anything to drink all day. About this time, the shrooms were coming back up because we had smoked a bowl. When we got to the hospital, we were all separated and sent into different rooms. I was taken to a room to have my vitals done. After a couple minutes in there, I got lightheaded again and almost passed out. When I got into my room, I was looking at the curtains, and the leaves on the curtains morphed into faces. Then the curtains changed into a flat checkerboard pattern, and a ripple went all the way across the room. My mom was called, along with everyone else's parents who went to the hospital, except B's. My mom and I waited until we were told we could leave, and then we passed my friend's room. I looked in, and he looked very worried. I asked him what was wrong, and he told me that they said I had already left. My mom talked the nurse into calling his parents and getting permission to take him home. Around 10:30 p.m., the effects were finally wearing down. I looked up at the ceiling upstairs, and it rippled a little, but nothing like before. I called my uncle to tell him I was okay, and then I tried to sleep. I didn't get to sleep until 4 a.m., and I had trouble sleeping for a few days. Now, I don't have any issues. My room is a little scary for some reason, but I am sure that will pass.